As cooler fall weather approached, myself and a few others from Van Products went to help at the annual Back in the Woods hunt for the disabled in Bear Creek, North Carolina. With a special permit from the North Carolina Wildlife Commission, we hunted earlier in 2013, actually getting to use rifles on the first day of bow season. The weather couldn't have been better, and the warmth and the hospitality of this community and the organizers of this event continue to amaze me and warm my heart with wonderful reminders of all that is right in the world, even in the midst of so much that is wrong. This event grew in 2013 to host 57 disabled hunters of all shapes, sizes, genders, and disabilities, ranging in age from 9 to 94. It was a tremendous undertaking and a huge success, with 50 whitetails taken over the 2 days. There were a lot of newcomers among familiar faces and old friends. Many shared with me how much they had been looking forward to this weekend, almost like the anticipation of children as Christmas nears, with eyes sparkling and chipper voices, excited to see and rekindle friendships made over the past 2 years, and eager to once again experience the thrill of the hunt. If you're a hunter, you already know about that thrill. If you've never hunted, perhaps I can help you catch the fever. Let me tell you a little about Alan Brackett. You may remember Alan's name from last year, and indeed the year before, because on both occasions he brought down the largest doe and won 2 rifles for his efforts. One was a Marlin 7mm 08 that he hunted with this year, and the other a Remington 243 rifle he has since given to his son Sean, who he told me would rather hunt than breed. 52-year-old Alan from Brown Summit has hunted since he was a teenager back in the 70s. He grew up in Suffolk, Virginia, and had ready access to a neighbor's farm where he was allowed to hunt, trap, and fish anytime he wanted. His father worked for the Boy Scouts, and in the summers they lived at the scout camps where Alan had access to archery and rifle ranges. Through it all, and with all that practice, Alan became a pretty good shot, even from his wheelchair, which he found himself in at age 26 in 1987 after his 1968 Ford F-100 pickup hit a patch of ice and ran off the road into a telephone pole. The L1 vertebra in his back was broken, and life as he knew it was no more. He told me that his wife came to see him only once during the 4 months he was in the hospital, and that he knew his marriage was over before he was discharged. The challenges just kept coming, but Alan persevered and adapted to accomplish each new goal. Even when both of his young boys, Sean and Alan Jr., just 8 and 9 years old, came to live with him a few years after his accident, and again when his teenage daughter, Chastity, also came when her mother became unable to properly care for her a decade later. Somehow, I think all that single parenting must have contributed to Alan's hunting skills, because along with being deadly accurate, he certainly is a patient man. His guide for this year's hunt, Ennis Laughlin, can attest to that. In fact, it was Ennis that told me about the big one that didn't get away. Having conquered the doe category for 2 years straight, this year Alan came home with the real prize, a beautiful 9-point buck. Alan gives Ennis all the credit for this deer. He spent a lot of time setting up for this hunt and had pictures from a motion camera with this buck coming in to feed. So they knew he was out there, and Ennis was confident that if they saw him, Alan would be the man to make the shot count and close the deal. Learning to hunt from a wheelchair has meant learning to shoot from either his right or left shoulder in order to widen the area that he can cover. Alan says he's very limited in how much he can move when game approaches. He has to position himself in the direction he thinks opportunities will present and hope for the best. On Saturday morning, Alan was in the right position when he first saw those big antlers. The excitement initially stirred by the video cam now became a reality, but unless Alan could get a clear visual of something besides horns, there would be no deer meat for supper. But this 3.5-year-old buck wasn't going to make it easy. I'm sure he'd seen many of his comrades succumb to the ways of fox-like hunters lying in wait. So he was wary and cagey himself, as it turns out. About that time, just as in a military battle, the young sentry, a young buck, stepped out into the clear. Alan said he was perplexed at first because he knew he'd seen that big rack and was sure they could not have shrunk that much. Not being privy to any interaction between the two deer, no one can say for sure that the youngster just didn't step out with pure reckless abandon and hunger pains. But I like to think that the general sent him out, specifically to see if he would end up dead. Even as Alan resisted pulling the trigger, Ennis signaled that the general was still there and staring straight at the blind. Anything and everything could have gone wrong. A slight movement, a change in the wind, or just a gut feeling in a veteran warrior. Ennis said Alan never flinched, didn't move a muscle, and neither did that buck for at least 10 minutes. How long could Alan hold his aim? Would the general advance or retreat? To whom would be the victory? With one final breath and a flare of his nostrils, a step was made, the shot fired, and with the accuracy of a trained sniper, the battle won. Alan Brackett has killed a lot of deer, but this one will be the first he has had mounted and given a place of honor in his home. He said he has an 8.25-pound largemouth bass that he caught as a young boy and a wild turkey waiting to keep the general company. Among hunters, Alan stands tall without standing at all. I met another good hunter this year for the very first time, and this one wears pink, but not just pink, pink camo. That's the first thing I noticed when I met Kelsey and Sonia at the Back in the Woods hunt, and now that I've gotten to know her a little better, pink camo seems more than appropriate attire for Kelsey Ray. Camo alone wouldn't be Kelsey, and as a signature color, pink wouldn't be her either. But once you meet Kelsey, you quickly understand why her wheelchair is adorned in pink camo and why her H&R 30-06 rifle is a perfect match. She is first and foremost a girl anyway, right? And what female doesn't want her entire outfit to be the perfectly coordinated ensemble? Her rifle, no different than a handbag, just a different weapon in her arsenal. Already you are thinking about a female hunter adorned in pink camo and carrying a pink camo gun, and you can almost forget that I mentioned her being in a wheelchair. Kelsey's Days of Cherridom begin on December 4th, 2011, at around 7:45 on a Sunday evening in Caroga Lake, New York, where she's from and lived at the time. She was just 17 years old and had been at her grandmother's house celebrating her younger brother Zach's 14th birthday. Her older brother, 19-year-old CJ, whom she idolized, and a friend of his, Justin, were headed out to Taco Bell or somewhere like that, probably just in search of other friends. Kelsey remembers not really wanting to, but deciding to go because her brother was going. Her memories of the rest of that outing are not always clear. She does remember telling Justin to stop driving so fast, to please slow down, and that she wanted to go back to the house. Official reports say he was traveling at speeds up to 100 miles per hour in a Ford Mustang, that he had pulled out to pass two other cars and came upon the intersection too fast to stop, traveled across the highway, hit an embankment in front of a house and a truck parked in front of the home before flipping over the truck and crashing into the house itself. The car landed vertically against the house, resting on its front bumper. Kelsey was ejected from the vehicle out the back window. Injuries to her head and back were life-threatening. The driver, Justin Van Nosteren, 19, was treated for his injuries and released. Christopher, CJ, and Sonia was pronounced dead on the scene. After 37 days in a coma, Kelsey began to regain consciousness and was airlifted to the Shepherd Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Her resulting paralysis was from injury to her T12 vertebra, but Kelsey will tell you that her biggest loss was losing her brother, not her ability to walk. It was several weeks after arriving at the Shepherd Center before the counselor and her parents actually told her about CJ. But she knew about 2 weeks before, when she overheard the nurses in her room early one morning when they thought she was still asleep. And even before then, she had been wondering why she hadn't heard from Big Brother CJ. She also didn't know that on the very same night that took her brother's life, her younger brother Zach was also involved in an automobile accident. He and several of his cousins were riding with an aunt when her car slid on an icy patch of road. Not knowing at the time about the extent of their injuries, which fortunately turned out to be minor, it was while on her way to be with her younger son that Kelsey's mom, Chrissy, got the call about the accident involving her 2 older children. Talk about a parent's worst nightmare. But now, life for both Kelsey and her mom, and for all of her family in many ways, would be forever changed. The staff at the Shepherd Center proved to be working for an appropriately named place, in that they truly did begin to shepherd this family in the 74 days that Kelsey remained there. How vitally important it became, particularly for a young adult, for interaction with recreational therapists. They were the first ones to show her the special outdoor wheelchair called a Renegade, like the one she now uses. It was through this initial contact made on their website that Kelsey discovered that she could get one in pink camo. After learning that she had hunted with her dad and brothers before her accident, that salesman at Renegade also invited her to come to Maine for a big hunt for the disabled that they were helping to sponsor. And it was at that hunt where the Renegade Wheelchair Company presented Kelsey with her very own pink camo rifle to match her chair. The red stag deer that she killed that weekend never stood a chance. It was also the recreational therapist at the Shepherd Center that got both Kelsey and her mom thinking about all the things that were out there for Kelsey to do, even though she would be confined to a wheelchair. This in turn made the family think about the limitations of living in cold, snowy Caruga Lake in Speculator, New York, where Chrissy and her then fiance, Donald Pinkerton, currently lived. Via the internet, Kelsey was encouraged to look for support groups and started becoming more and more aware of the numerous wheelchair sport activities like water skiing and cycling and deer hunting, just to name a few, that were far more abundant in warmer climates. And it was also on the internet that she first read about ASAP, Adaptive Sports and Adventures Programs, a vital support organization through the Carolinas healthcare systems. Chrissy and Donald Pinkerton were willing to do whatever it took to help Kelsey thrive, even move to North Carolina, which they did in August of 2013. But before she was ready to leave New York, there had been one more very important item on Kelsey's agenda. She had only been 3 months into her senior year of high school when the accident occurred, and the time she lay in a coma and then spent in Atlanta meant she had missed 7 months of school. I know a lot of students would have just dropped out completely, or at the least started their senior year over and missed graduating with those lifelong classmates, but not Kelsey. With amazing commitment and the help of tutors, great teachers, and understanding school administrators, Kelsey Ray and Sonia managed to make up all the work and still graduate on time with the class of 2012. There was never really another option. It was a promise she had made to CJ. Once the association was made with ASAP and the move to North Carolina complete, it was the people with ASAP that first told Kelsey about the Back in the Woods hunt. Because hunting events for the disabled or able-bodied events are primarily male-oriented, the organizers are always excited to find that special female that loves to hunt. There is one lady in Bear Creek who is quite the hunter herself, and she was the lucky one chosen to be Kelsey's guide. Her name is Dina Jones. Dina's husband Keenan got Dina started hunting years ago, and she really loves it. And of course, wanting to be competitive with Keenan and their friends, she has studied all the different aspects of what to do and what not to do when it comes to deer hunting. She always gets to the blind really early. She never wears anything that will add a strange scent to her presence. In fact, she sprays herself with scent cover. She parks her vehicle far away and approaches on foot and gets into place very quietly. And usually her methods are rewarded. So when she and Kelsey and Chrissy went out on Friday afternoon, they pretty much followed suit to Dina's usual actions, and sure enough, Kelsey bagged a beautiful 6-point buck. So the next morning, Kelsey, having already gotten a buck, was in no big hurry and ended up arriving late. Dina told me that she just knew they were not going to see anything that day, but that there were 5 things she had learned from Kelsey. 1. There's no need to get up early and get to the stand before daylight. You should sleep in a little longer and have a good breakfast before you go. They didn't get in the stand until 7:30. 2. No need to use scent cover. You should shower and shampoo with something that smells purty, like Bath and Body Works or something. Besides, you want your hair to look good for the pics. 3. No need to park far away. Park about 15 yards from the stand so you won't have to walk so far. 4. No need to be quiet. 3 women in the woods together, of course they were going to talk. 5. You gotta have the right gun. Pink camo is the trick. So, sleep late, smell pretty, park close, talk, and always carry a pink camo gun. Dina says the heavens smiled upon Kelsey, her mom, and herself that day, and that she learned a valuable lesson. No matter how impossible a situation may seem, leave room for God to work His magic. Kelsey told me she had just gotten a text from a friend that morning and responded by text to tell her that she really wasn't feeling it today and thought she was just going to head back to camp. It was at that very moment when her second 6-point buck of the weekend stepped into range at about 40 yards away, and with calm effortlessness, her pink camo drew blood red, and with a single perfectly positioned shot with a 165 grain bullet, down he went. Personally, I think that Kelsey just proves that males, whether 2-legged or 4, are irresistibly drawn to the scent of a woman, and that God does have a special fondness for pink camo and for Kelsey. Who knows what roads God will lead her down next? Although her life was tragically changed, she values it even more since the accident because she understands that she was still given life when her brother was not. Her recovery inspires hope. She told me she wasn't going to lie in bed and be depressed, but get out and live. She's still adjusting to her new normal, but she wants to help other people, and I can't help but believe that through her, God will indeed touch many lives and inspire and help them in countless ways. God certainly works through the Bear Creek community and all the individuals who help to make this an amazing adventure for so many disabled people. Unfortunately, with 57 hunters, I didn't get around to speaking with all of them, but we took a lot of pictures and are happy to share them with you now. On behalf of Van Products and all these smiling individuals and their families, I would like to thank each and every one who helped to make this event possible. May your endeavors continue to be blessed and live on in the warmth of these smiles.